Fair Use Copyright Disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Also, before we start the video, all the information presented in my videos are sourced from the internet, first-hand accounts, rumors, interviews, and credible news sources. However, I'm not saying the information is fact.
Killers move in silence. You feel me?
Hey, so, see, I was trying to end it, but I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You think it's a lot of killers left now that D-Bix and them gone?
Denzel Omar, or as some may call him D-Bix, is a member of the 456 Islands Piru Street Gang. 456 Islands Piru is a gang that's located in the northern section of Pomona, California. They get the 456 in their name from the dice game craps that also goes by the numbers 456. From when they're originally being formed, most members from this gang would play craps outside in the neighborhood. Denzel was first introduced to the 456 Islands Piru by a very active member of 456 Islands Piru by the name Johnny Roo. Johnny lived on the same street that Denzel did in Ontario called Yorkshire. By this time Johnny was already fully active in this dark world. Young Omar too would follow suit after Johnny began to introduce him to other members of the islands. Johnny himself had already been a member for some time after being put on by members of 456 Islands Piru, who mostly lived around the area on Randy Block. During the early 2000s, several members of 456 Islands Piru had moved to Upland, California, and had lived in an area known as Randy Block. While they were there, they created a clique called the SI, or Small Islands. They also began to recruit local youth with members such as K. Roo, Snow Roo, Puff Puff, Four Brays being a few who lived in several areas such as Wedgwood Block, Alpine Block, Springfield Block, and the Pebble Grove Apartments, who during this time were heavily occupied by their allies, the Pasadena Denver Lane Bloods. These areas, after they moved there, became a hotbed for gang activity. The area was so bad for both fights and drug sales, the SWAT team had to be called several, and they even raided an apartment in the area because of drug sales. They were selling drugs all throughout the city and in other areas such as Montclair, which was why in 2007 they were involved in a large drug bust in Montclair after they were caught selling drugs all throughout the low-income apartments on Kingsley Street. D-Bix would be battle-tested during this time period, as even though he lived on Yorkshire Street in Ontario, he would be brought back to the islands, as well as other areas where 456 members would hang out such as Randy Block, Wedgwood Block and other areas. While he was there, he as well as other young members from 456 would have to prove themselves by engaging with their rivals, as well as anyone who they felt was disrespecting their set. A few examples would be when they confronted a member of the Southside Compton Crips, who they saw on Wedgwood Block wearing a Submariner's hat, a hat that is commonly associated with their rivals the Sintown Crips. Another being when they confronted another Crip on Randy Block who they suspected was from Sintown. During this time period, a few rivals would actually pass through these areas, looking for 456 members. One member actually attended Hillside High School in Upland, where several members of 456 Piru as well as the Pasadena Denver Lane Bloods attended as well, which actually led to a couple of confrontations, as well as a rumored shooting where that member was almost hit. As time went on, D-Bix proved himself more, and older members began to know about his presence, as he became a name commonly known in his section for putting in work. It should be added that 456 was engaged in back-and-forth shootings with several of their rivals from Sintown 357 Crips, Nap Crips, Neckland Crips, Southside Village Crips, and Ghost Town Crips. During the late 2000s, the time when D-Bix was active, 456 was already experiencing members moving out of Pomona to other places, such as Montclair, Upland, Ontario, Victorville, and San Bernardino. However, 456 is such a large gang because they're generational and constantly recruit new members, which is why even today, as most black gangs that felt the effects of gentrification, 456 hasn't. And not only that, they're one of the few gangs in Pomona where a large amount of members actually still live and control their territory. Throughout the years of 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, D-Bix would continue to gain more respect after continuing to prove himself and show his loyalty to his fellow members of 456 Islands Piru. During these years, 456 Piru was engaged in numerous shootouts with their Crip rivals and began to lose members as a result of the gang war. This losses would have an extremely deep impact on young Denzel, as he would start to feel the real effects of loss, and who was grasping the realities of this dark world. Rumors have it that some young members of 456 began to have nightmares of the things they were witnessing as a result of this brutal war against the Crips. However, they would pull through and continue in the war, as during this time period their enemies had the same exact mindset as they did and were out for revenge like every other criminal street gang fighting for survival in the city of Pomona. One major event that took place in the islands during D-Bix's early years was when several younger members from 456 felt they were being mistreated by some of the other members from their hood. They felt others were selective politicking and were not keeping it real with them. These select few members who felt mistreated would choose to leave 456 Piru and created their own new set called the Young Pomona Criminals, or YPC. They would hang out mostly on the main street off Logan. However, while some thought the issue would later be dropped and everything would return back to normal, YPC stood on business, and in a few incidents they let off shots to let others know they weren't playing. As a result, Ox stepped in and put an end to the entire in-house beef, and others who didn't get with the program received extreme punishment. This event showed young Denzel about the complex inner politics that go on within the gang world. Denzel's older brother Devin, or D-Ru, would also join the islands, and Johnny would take them both under his wing. 456 has many enemies in the city of Pomona, but their fiercest rivalry are with the Crips. This is the reason why they also go by the Islands Gang, because they're the only set of Pirus or Damus in the city, and they don't get along with any of them. Around 2010, 456 Piru had several altercations with their many rivals. However, they were engaged in a feud specifically with the Neckland Crips, a Crip on the east side of Pomona, whose territory is just south of 456's hood, right under the 10 freeway. The name Neckland is derived from the area back in the 70s and 80s having many poor white that the locals would refer to as rednecks, hence the name Neckland. Neckland Crips extremely hated 456, who previously gunned down a member of the Neckland Crips in their territory. However, in 2010 things were becoming tense after 456 and Neckland had been engaging in back shootings and were out looking out for each other daily. During this period, young Denzel had been having issues with the Necklands, in which some of the members attended the same school members of 456 were attending. On February 2, 2010, Denzel Devon and several members of the 456 Piru had an altercation at Ted Green Park, which led to a fist fight. During the fist fight, D-Bix pulls out a long rifle and begins firing on the group of young teens, killing 2 and leaving 1 in critical condition. After the shooting, the 6 teens all fled in different directions, but were ultimately caught and would later be charged. This double homicide shook up the entire community, while shootings and murders did occur in the area. None were as brazen and out in the open and during a bright day, with dozens of people in all directions of the shooting witnessing the event. All 6 teenage members of 456 Piru were charged as adults and were subsequently sentenced for their roles in the double homicide and the 1 attempted homicide, according to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Thomas, 18, Moore, 17, and Jenkins, 17, each pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced on June 1, 2011, to 9 years in state prison. Boyd, 18, pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced on June 1, 2011, to 3 years in state prison. Denzel Omar D-Bix, 15, pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced on June 1, 2011, to 12 years in state prison. Denzel's older brother, Devin Omar D-Ru, 17, pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced on June 29, 2011, to 9 years in state prison. After the deaths of Timothy Moore and British Hugh Neckland would vow revenge, and several shootings took place after the ordeal. The two were extremely loved, and even at a young age the older members from their gang loved them deadly, and even till this day the two youth are honored by the fellow Crip brethren / One of the members of the Neckland Crips, Pritish Dune, was actually the cousin of G Stone, a high-ranking member of the Ghost Town Crips, another rival to 456 Piru, who's located just north of the island's territory in Pomona in the neighborhood that surrounds Willie White Park. G Stone states himself on a Facebook post, "Rest in peace to my cousin Pritish. I will never forget about you, and I promise them people gone always have problems on your behalf. 456 killer forever." As you can see, 456 is hated by many rivals, and for some of their rivals, it goes far beyond the typical gang banging you see in most gang wars. For some of their rivals it is a personal war, as many of the younger members are actually the descendants of previous generations, and they're born into it and inherit the beef by birth. They're locked in a vicious cycle of never-ending war and loss, which makes the bonds they develop through trauma and conflict extremely personal, because at any given moment, it can all be over in an instant. They're never truly safe, and each gang as willing as travel to great distances in order to get their target. However, G Stone is someone you'll be hearing more about in a future video that I'll be doing when I talk about the story of 456 Piru. As G Stone's story is absolutely wild, you wouldn't believe the things that he has been through being from a gang that's enemies with 456 Piru. If I might say, 456 Piru is absolutely one of the most ruthless gangs I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's amazing he's survived this long in the game. But the people they've developed into being 456's rivals makes you understand why they've become the way they have, and you will judge the actions that they've taken to survive this ruthless gang war. However, the most tragic thing about this situation is the effects that their two murders brought to their loved ones around, particularly to the mother of Pritish Dune, who after all these years later still heavily mourns the loss of her son Pritish. It's truly tragic how gang violence can affect those around the ones you truly love the most. Seeing how even after all these years she's still mourning and trying to recover from this tragedy. For all of you who are seeing this, understand that you too can share the same fate as anyone mentioned here, as no one is immune to the dark realities that gang violence will bring to you. Also, to Pritish's mother, if you ever come across this video, I want to send my condolences, as I could never understand the feeling of what it feels like to lose a child. My prayers are with you and your family, and I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. However, we're going to be skipping about a decade later in this story during the 2020 to 2021 years. During this time period, D-Bix was in prison, and many things were happening on the outside in Pomona. During this time, new enemies were acquired as well as new alliances. However, around 2019, one significant event did occur, that being the release of Baby Stone, a member of the Trey 5/7 Sintown Gangster Crips, one of 456's most hated rivals. When Stone was released from prison, he was on rampage, as 1 year prior to his release, his 10-year-old son was almost killed after being shot in the chest by a member of the 456 Pirus. With his release after he himself beat a murder case that he was charged with back in 2011, Stone wanted revenge, and all the loyal members from the various allied Crip sets fell in line under him and followed him on his quest for revenge. D-Bix would be released later shortly this time, and would return home to a Pomona that was locked in a war that was significantly different from when he was on the streets. Now, instead of rivals tagging on walls to show disrespect, members would make music videos and diss on social media. This was a different era from the time when D-Bix was on the streets. However, Denzel would adjust and move on with his life, now returning home and being a legend in 456, as he just returned home after a double homicide and not snitching on anyone. To 456 he was royalty, and his hood treated him as a god. Now, before we move on with the video, I want to make this clear: this video is going to be a brief summary of the events that mostly involved D-Bix. As I have said earlier, I will doing a more in-depth video of all the events that involved 456 Piru when I do a complete story on them in a future video. I'm only doing this video because I wanted to cover a short story of the events surrounding this gang and some of their members, and D-Bix is one of those members I have chosen for this video. When D-Bix was released from prison during 2021, he was seen as a legend by the entirety of 456, but he was extremely praised by the younger members, who all knew who he was because of all the stories older members would tell. But also because his double homicide was known to everyone, and several people have made YouTube videos describing the incident. He was only 15 when he was locked up, but he didn't snitch and kept it solid, so everyone in the hood knew him as a real one because of it. When he was released from prison during 2021, the 456 Islands Piru were locked in a deadly war with their rivals, with their top ops being Baby Stone, Mueller J, Antlock, Baby Tiny, Rax, and Krim, just to name a few. He would have younger members wanting to be his young homie, with Lil D-Bix being his main young homie who he took under his wing. During the years 2021 and 2022, when D-Bix entered back into the streets full-fledged, he found himself back into the same gang war, and lost several of his close friends during these years. Some even allege that 456 Piru's enemies even had put money on their head because of how much of a threat 456 Piru is. Another event that D-Bix was involved in was a fight with a member of the Ghost Town Crips named Rax. Rax is arguably one of the most active members of the Ghost Town Crips. He survived numerous wars on all fronts, from 12th Street Sharkies, Pasadena Denver Lane Bloods, 456 Piru, Happy Town Pomona, and many more. During this time period, 456 would go through several changes, and one is that they would begin beefing with some of the Hispanic gangs in Pomona. In an interview with Wiggins on YouTube, a member of the 456 Islands Piru talks about how now his gang now beefs with some of these gangs, which only came on later on in the game. And once they started beefing with one of them, it created a domino effect, and now it feels like they beef with all of them now. One of the events that brought on new enemies was the murder of Rambo from Raza and Ida Locos. It's alleged that Rambo was formerly a member of 456 Piru, but got kicked out after he didn't make the cut. He would later join Raza and Ida Locos and begin flashing money on social media and taunting his ops. He was still bitter about being kicked out of 456, and he and some of his former homies would diss each other on social media. This all led up to a series of events which ultimately led to his death. Raza and Ida Locos would vow for revenge, and this incident led to a series of back-and-forth shootings, as well as the two gangs dissing each other heavily on social media. Raza and Ida Locos was already beefing with 12th Street Sharkies heavy, but after this event, they began beefing with 456 Piru heavily now too. This was one of the many murders that brought 456 Piru and 12th Street Sharkies together and made them become heavily aligned, since they already shared many rivals, especially the Pomona Crips. These two aligned together has easily become the deadliest alliance in the city of Pomona, and in the few short years of their alliance, they have already killed many enemies together. However, a 12th Street member named Baby Flocks was found guilty for the murder and would receive a life sentence for his part in the murder. 12th Street Sharkies members would call themselves Baby Flocks Gang in honor of Flocks committing this murder. Flocks was one of the most active members from 12th Street during this time, and this act sealed his legacy as a legend. However, I should add, some has said that Flocks will be coming home soon because of a flaw in his case. However, I haven't seen anything proving otherwise. Also, this was one of the murders that really kicked up the beef, as other gangs that were allied with Raza and Ida got involved because Rambo was so loved, and Raza and Ida Locos would go on a rampage and would go on a series of murder for their fallen member Rambo, who they loved dearly and honor him heavily. In January of 2023, Reggie and PJ was shot and killed at a party on the south side of Pomona. 456 Piru has held Raza and Ida Locos responsible for the double homicide. Raza and Ida Locos vowed for revenge, and it seems they were living up to their new reputation as being ruthless, and they also previously gunned down several rivals from other gangs in an extremely short period. With the death of his young homie Little D-Bix, Denzel would find himself right back into the same gang war he was involved in all those ago. 456 would have a candle vigil, as well as a large funeral honoring their fallen young members.
Well, this morning, authorities are looking for a suspect responsible for a violent night in a Pomona neighborhood. 2 people were shot and killed, one of them a teenager. Homicide detectives say a 17-year-old and a man were shot outside a home on South Reservoir. A neighbor says he heard the rapid gunfire, followed by people getting in their cars and then driving away quickly.
I hear only the gunfire, the boom, 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 boom.
And there's still no known motive.
Whole lot of me, whole lot of me.
He's about to put the grass down.
It's okay. I wanted them to. Okay. Whatever y'all doing, doing it. It's PJ.
County News reporter Team Patel live with what investigators are saying. Just heartbreaking to hear that a 15-year-old kid was dead, but what do we know about this investigation?
Well, there is a lot we don't know, unfortunately. The police just left about 15 minutes ago, but they were here at the mall all last night. What they tell us is that they believe that there is a fight that started inside the mall. It spilled into the parking lot out here by the movie theater. That's where we believe the shooting happened. But then they found that 15-year-old victim who had gunshot wounds on the backside of the mall, and some people started running then across the street to a Target. That store had to be locked down last night. We have some video that shows all of the police response last night at those different crime crime scenes. I just talked to police. They tell us they do not have anyone in custody yet. What they are trying to figure out is exactly how many people were involved and how many suspects there may be. They tell us there was a shooting and a stabbing. We're trying to find out more details about that. Here's what they tell us, though, not just about that 15-year-old boy, but about a second person who was injured.
As we were investigating the call, we got a call from a local trauma center about a second subject who was injured, who was possibly involved. That person right now is in emergency surgery, and we do not know the extent of his injuries.
And we don't know if that second person was shot or stabbed, if they are another victim, or if they might have also been a suspect. Again, so many questions this morning. We did talk to police about security video, whether there's anything inside or outside the mall that might help shed some light on that. They wouldn't go into specifics, but they do tell us they are looking for any witnesses who were here and might be able to have some information. That's the very latest in Montclair. We'll send it back to you.
On February 3, 2023, 456 Piru, 12th Street, and Ghetto family members were hanging out together at the Montclair Mall together, and a fight broke out, and a member of 456 Piru ends up killing a member of Ghetto family named Mandos. Since 12th Street was their Ghetto family felt that 12th Street should have done something about it. However, previously Ghetto family and 12th Street were cordial with each other before this event. After this murder, and because Ghetto family felt disrespected by 12th Street because of their inaction, Ghetto family declared war on both 12th Street, which made 12th Street and 456 becoming closer because they share the same enemies. 456 goes on a rampage, killing several members from Ghetto family. However, I'll go into more details about those murders when I do separate videos on all three gangs from 12th Street Sharkies, 456 Islands Piru, and Ghetto family.
New details in the shooting death of a 15-year-old boy outside Montclair Place Mall. Police have arrested 3 more suspects. Investigators say the boy was gunned down during a fight in the mall parking lot on February 2nd. Police arrested a 17-year-old boy 2 days later, and tonight more suspects in custody. 2 20-year-old men and a 16-year-old boy. Officials say the victim, Omar Rivera of Chino, was not a gang member. Police have not yet announced a motive.
Also, according to rumors on the streets, what's actually not that known as Ghetto family had already had secret tension with 456 after a member of the Island Block criminals killed an East Side Pomona gang member named Demon a decade prior. Ghetto family merged with East Side Pomona, and East Side Pomona was told to drop the issues with the Island Block criminals, since they also merged with a gang called Northside Pomona, who are allied with and who also shares the same territory with 456 Piru. But older East Side Pomona members also secretly disliked 456 because of their relationship with the Island Block criminals. But now with the death of Mandos, now some older members could push for what they always wanted, for a war against the islands. However, it would prove to be a fatal mistake. In fact, 456 Piru together with the 12th Street Sharkies began committing so many homicides together the city had to hold an emergency meeting just to address the issue. I'm not kidding, these two gangs are currently terrorizing not only the city of Pomona, but even places such as San Bernardino, Victorville, Apple Valley, San Fernando, and even the high desert.
Hey, Chief. Hey, Chief. Hey, Jesus. Robert.
There's been kids coming in here for 5+ years. You haven't done shit.
Hey, Jesus.
Fuck you, Tim. You haven't done shit either.
There's a big trans.
I want him removed. I want him removed.
And that's the message here tonight. All of you haven't done shit, and kids are fucking dying.
I met with you 2 weeks ago.
Fuck you. That's not enough.
Oh, see, we can't work together.
Transparency is an issue when it starts with
Yeah, Chief. I'd like to ask this. Jesus, you.
So, in your public, in your
hey,
comments,
listen.
you had to come
Let's take a break.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break.
Let's take a break.
We're gonna take a break, folks.
Dude,
No, you
Don't
made
you-
it about me. You made it about me, Bobby.
don't be flipping people off. Don't represent yourself like that. And if you're the type of person that likes to dish it out, you better be the type of person that could take it.
City manager doesn't give a shit about these kids.
All right.
Come on.
Very respectful. We have lost over on the southeast side of the city. We lost a 17-year-old and his brother. And of course, there was a more recent incident that happened at Montclair Place where a young man, a 15-year-old, lost his life
In the 2 short years of D-Bix being out of prison, he was already back into the heat of the gang war. Old rivals that have been around before he joined the gang scene, with a few beings such as Mueller J, Baby Stone, and Lil Ha Ha, have already been killed. And with new rivals being such as Crim, Rambo, and Mondo's being taken out of the game. With the death of Mondo's ghetto family began dissing 456 and 12th Street heavy, and would often lurk to find members, and by this time now several shootings and murders had taken place. However, with Denzel's young homie Little D-Bix being murdered, Denzel as well as 456 would vow for revenge. Allegedly after 456 got the low on some ghetto family members hanging out their territory on the corner outside Mills Market, 456 allegedly would catch their rivals hanging outside and would show them no mercy.
All right, Kirk, thank you. We begin with breaking news. One person dead, another wounded after a shooting near a neighborhood market in Montclair.
The suspect is still on the run this morning. KTLA's Carlos Herrera is live near the scene with the very latest on the investigation. Carlos, good morning.
Good morning, Elena and Chris. This investigation continues several hours after this shooting. You can see the crime scene extends even to the streets near this neighborhood market that you just mentioned. You can see the evidence markers near the sidewalk, in the actual parking lot, and then inside the store itself. Authorities this morning telling me that they're following several leads, but still need more information on at least one suspect who is still on the run. Take a look at the video here. They say this all started when authorities received several 911 calls from people in this area around 9 p.m. They reported hearing multiple gunshots being fired near the area of Kingsley Street and Mills Avenue, again near the Mills Market at this intersection. When officers arrived, they found 2 men with multiple gunshot wounds.
Both were transported to a local trauma center. One is in stable condition. Unfortunately, the other one succumbed to his injuries. We still have outstanding suspects, yes.
Detectives have determined the victims were shot in the street, but they ran into the convenience store to hide. There was a store clerk that tried to help them, also called 911. That person now being interviewed. It is still unclear what exactly caused the shooting, but again, at least one suspect on the run this morning. Police plan on being here for a few more hours to continue their investigation. Again, if you have any information that will help investigators with this one, you're urged to please contact the Montclair Police Department. We'll send it back to you, Alina and Chris.
After the death of Widget from Ghetto Family 456, and Ghetto Family's rivalry would increase, and dissing was heavy on social media. 456 Piru would celebrate their Hood Day only 4 days after the death of Widget on their Hood Day April 11th, and everyone would show out to celebrate. Members of 456 would also pay tribute to the fallen members Reggie and PJ, and they missed deadly. They were extremely loved, especially by the younger members who have known them their entire lives. The following month of May 30th, the Montclair Police Department released a public statement which reads as followed. Montclair detectives immediately began following up on several leads and ultimately identified Denzel Omar, Levant Johnson, Kenneth Stewart, and Brandon Blackwell as being responsible for the death of Lopez. On May 30th, several search warrants were executed and all suspects were taken into custody with the help of Pomona SWAT team. 6 illegal firearms, including 2 firearm suppressors, were seized. On June 1st, San Bernardino County Office filed PC 187 against all 4 suspects. Montclair Police Department feels it is important that the members of the community know both suspects Brandon Blackwell and Denzel Omar were previously convicted on homicide charges and were recently released on parole. The motive in this investigation was determined to be gang-related. Currently 456 Piru is still locked in a deadly war with their rivals, and things have seemed to only have gotten worse. This short story I did on D-Bix was a story I wanted to do for some time now. However, I will doing stories on other members of 456 Piru as well as some of their rivals. Also, I will doing a complete story on 456 Islands Piru that is still currently in the works. That story will probably be around 12 hours long and separated in multiple parts. I also plan on doing stories of other Pomona gangs, such as the 357 Sintown Crips, Ghost Town Crips, 12th Street Sharkies, Ghetto Family, and even the Pasadena Denver Lane Bloods. I want to thank you all for watching this story. I want to also say follow me on social media at Gangsterfiles on Instagram. I'll leave my social media in the caption and in the comments as well. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe. Also, if you want to leave any suggestions, feel free to comment or contact me on Instagram. And thank you all again.